The spit hit Rosa Martinez's face at exactly 6:47 in the morning. Trevor Ashford, 19 years old, wearing a watch that cost more than her car, laughed as the glob of saliva dripped down her cheek. His three friends at the corner booth joined in phones out recording her humiliation like it was entertainment. Rosa stood frozen coffee pot trembling in her hand, the smell of burnt bacon and motor oil thick in the diner air. She'd worked the graveyard shift, her third job this week, and every muscle in her body screamed for rest. But she couldn't react. Not to entitled college kids. Not when she had rent due and a daughter waiting outside for the school bus. She turned away, reaching for a napkin to wipe her face. Trevor's voice cut through the laughter. "Hey, did I say you could leave? I want a refund. This coffee tastes like poverty." Rosa's hands shook as she pulled out her order pad. Her manager would dock her pay if she caused a scene. Martinez's diner couldn't afford to lose customers, even ones who treated her like dirt. She scribbled the refund, her eyes burning with unshed tears, and placed it on their table without meeting Trevor's gaze. Outside, behind the dumpster where the morning cold bit through her father's oversized army jacket, Lily Rodriguez pressed record on her cracked phone screen. She was 8 years old, small for her age, and smart enough to know that what she was witnessing through the diner window wasn't just mean, it was wrong. The kind of wrong her father used to talk about before Afghanistan took him. The kind of wrong that required witnesses. The phone's storage was nearly full, but she kept filming. Trevor's face was clear in the frame. The spit was visible. Her mother's humiliation was documented. Then the diner door opened and Jack Morrison stepped out. Jack was 70 years old, Vietnam veteran, homeless for the past 6 months. After his VA benefits got tangled in bureaucracy, he no longer had the energy to fight. He slept in the alley behind the diner because Rosa sometimes left him food in clean containers, never making him feel like charity. He'd seen the spit through the window, his hands scarred from decades of hard living, and one brutal war clenched into fists as he approached Trevor's etevam. "Son, you don't have to treat people like that." Trevor looked up, smirking. His friends' laughter died as they sized up the old man in stained fatigues. Trevor stood slowly, his expensive sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. He was 6 feet tall, athletic, used to getting his way through a combination of his father's money and his own willingness to push boundaries nobody ever enforced. "Old man, this doesn't concern you." Jack's voice stayed level, the kind of calm that comes from seeing real violence and choosing peace anyway. "It concerns me when I see a boy who needs to learn respect." Trevor shoved him, not hard, just enough to make a point. Enough to show his friends he wasn't afraid of some homeless veteran who smelled like the alley. But Jack's balance wasn't what it used to be. His body worn down by 7 decades and one war too many couldn't compensate. His feet tangled. He went backward, arms windmilling, and his skull met the concrete curb with a sound that made Lily gasp behind her phone. Blood pooled immediately dark and spreading fast. Trevor stared down at Jack's crumpled form, his face going pale. For 3 seconds, the world held its breath. Then Trevor's expression hardened into something uglier than fear, denial mixed with entitlement. He looked at his friends, at the gathering crowd, at Rosa standing in the diner doorway with her hands over her mouth. He tripped. You all saw it. The old drunk tripped. That's when Trevor noticed Lily. She was standing now, phone still raised, still recording. Her small face was set in an expression too serious for 8 years old. The kind of seriousness that comes from losing a parent and learning too young that the world isn't fair. Trevor's eyes locked onto the phone, onto the evidence, onto the end of his consequence-free existence. "Hey, kid, delete that right now." Lily ran, her father's jacket flapped behind her as she sprinted down the alley, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles from last night's rain. Behind her, Trevor's voice rose to a shout, followed by the sound of car doors slamming. His BMW's engine roared to life. Lily's breath came in ragged gasps as she cut through the industrial district, 6 blocks of abandoned warehouses and empty lots where nobody would hear her scream. She tried her mother's phone first, straight to voicemail. Rosa's manager confiscated phones during shifts, a policy designed to squeeze every minute of productivity from workers who couldn't afford to lose their jobs. Lily's fingers shook as she dialed 911. "Please hold. All operators are currently busy." The automated voice was cheerful, oblivious. Lily could hear the BMW getting closer, its expensive engine echoing off warehouse walls. She ducked behind a rusted shipping container, pressing herself into the shadows and tried to think. Her father used to say that smart warriors knew when to fight and when to hide. She was good at hiding. She'd gotten good at a lot of things since he died. Trevor's voice carried across the empty lot. Come on, kid, I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to talk. My lawyers can make this go away. You don't want to get involved in legal stuff, trust me. His friends' voices joined in trying different tactics. One promised money, another tried being friendly. But Lily heard the desperation underneath their words, the kind of panic that comes from watching your privilege crack. She hugged her phone to her chest, feeling the hard shape of it through her jacket, and prayed for a miracle. 3 miles away, Sarah Chen ran her hand along the K9 transport truck's side panel, checking for any damage from yesterday's route. The pre-dawn air was cold enough to make her breath visible, and the Phoenix depot was quiet except for the distant hum of highway traffic. She was 62 years old with silver streaking through her black hair and a scar on her left forearm from a training accident 2 decades back. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, testing latches, checking tire pressure, verifying that the climate control system for the dog compartment was functioning perfectly. Inside the truck, Ranger watched her through the mesh divider. He was a 6-year-old German Shepherd, massive and dignified with eyes that carried the weight of 43 high-risk missions. Sarah met his gaze and felt the familiar pang in her chest, the one that came every time she looked at him and remembered Marcus. Her hand moved to her neck, touching the dog tags that hung there on a worn chain. The metal was smooth from 3 years of constant contact, warm from her body heat. Marcus Chen, Sergeant K9 Handler, Afghanistan 2021. The tags were all she had left of her partners, a man who trained Ranger, the man who died protecting her when an IED strike went wrong and she'd frozen instead of taking cover. Ranger whined softly, a sound he only made when he sensed her pain. Behind him, Shadow and Blitz shifted in their compartments. Shadow was a Belgian Malinois, sleek and calculating, trained for tracking and pursuit. Blitz was a Dutch Shepherd, younger and eager, the fastest dog Sarah had ever worked with. All three were elite canines worth $60,000 each in training costs alone, and Sarah's job was to transport them safely to a downtown demonstration event where they'd show off their skills to senators and press. It was supposed to be simple. Pick up the buddies, drive them to the event, return by sunset. No danger, no decisions, no chance to freeze when someone's life depended on her. Sergeant Wilson appeared from the depot office, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a clipboard in the other. He was 55, her former supervisor, the man who'd helped her transition from active K9 handler to transport driver after Marcus died. His face was weathered from 30 years of police work, and his eyes held the kind of concern that came from watching someone drown in grief for 3 years straight. Sarah, got your route here. Should be straightforward, but there's been some activity. She took the clipboard, scanning the highlighted roads. What kind of activity? Wilson hesitated, and that hesitation made Sarah's instincts flare. Biker gangs been spotted near some of these intersections. Probably nothing, but keep your radio on. Sarah's jaw tightened. I'll be fine. I'm always fine. The words came out sharper than she intended. Wilson studied her face for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of memory. That's what your old man used to say, right before the mission that killed him. Sarah climbed into the truck without responding, but Wilson's words followed her. Marcus had said he'd be fine. Marcus had said it was a routine patrol. Marcus had been wrong, and Sarah had been too slow to save him. She started the engine, feeling Ranger's eyes on her from the back. The dog knew. Dogs always knew. She pulled out of the depot as the sun started painting the sky, orange and pink. The radio played soft country music, the kind Marcus used to hum along to during long transports. Sarah's hands were steady on the wheel, but inside her chest, guilt coiled like barbed wire. 3 years hadn't dulled it. Nothing had. Ranger barked once, sharp and commanding. Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror and saw all 3 dogs, alert, ears forward, bodies tense. They only reacted like that when something was wrong, when their training kicked in and they sensed danger before human senses could process it. Sarah checked her mirrors again, more carefully this time. The highway was mostly empty at this hour, but 6 motorcycles were approaching from behind, riding in a formation too tight to be casual. They weren't passing. They were matching her speed exactly. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. Probably nothing. Bikers traveled in packs. It didn't mean anything. Shadow growled low and sustained. Blitz joined in. Ranger stood pressing his nose against the mesh, his entire body radiating tension. Sarah's pulse kicked up despite her efforts to stay calm. When all three dogs reacted together, it meant one thing: real threat, real danger. Trust their instincts or pay the price. The motorcycles spread out, two flanking her sides, two behind one, scouting ahead, one following at a distance. Military patrol pattern. Sarah's training recognized it even as her mind tried to rationalize it away. She reached for her phone to call Wilson, but before she could dial, her GPS rerouted her through a shortcut to avoid construction traffic. The roads got emptier. Warehouses replaced businesses. Witnesses disappeared. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to turn around, but the GPS insisted this was the fastest route. She followed it, and with each turn, the knot in her stomach tightened. The bikers stayed with her, shadows in her mirrors, predators tracking prey. Then she heard it, a child's voice, high and terrified, cutting through the industrial silence. "Help! Please, somebody help!" Sarah's foot hit the brake before her conscious mind made the decision. The truck screeched to a stop in an empty lot between two warehouses. Lily Rodriguez burst from behind a shipping container, her father's oversized jacket flapping her face streaked with tears, a phone clutched in her small hand like a lifeline. Sarah threw open the door. "Get in now." Lily didn't hesitate. She scrambled into the truck's cab, and Sarah saw the BMW skid around the corner behind them, saw four young men jump out with faces that mixed arrogance and desperation in equal measure. The dogs erupted in synchronized barking, a sound that hit like thunder in the enclosed space. Sarah's hands moved automatically, door locks engaged, engines still running, evaluating threats and exits with instincts Marcus had drilled into her. Lily pressed against the passenger seat, trying to make herself small, and Sarah felt a fierce protective surge that she hadn't experienced in 3 years. "What's going on? Who's chasing you?" Lily's voice came out in gasps between sobs. "Bad men. They hurt someone. I saw it. I filmed it. They want my phone." Behind them, Rangers' barking intensified. Shadow and Blitz joined in, their bodies tight with aggression, held in check only by training. Sarah looked in the rearview mirror and saw the dogs forming a protective triangle around Lily's position, even though they were separated by the cab wall. They sensed her fear. They sensed danger. They were preparing to protect. The tallest of the young men approached Sarah's door. He was handsome in the way rich kids often are, well-fed, well-groomed, completely unaccustomed to being told no. His smile was calculated, designed to disarm. "Lady, that kid stole something from me. Just hand her over and we'll forget this happened." Sarah's voice came out cold and level, the tone she used to use during high-risk operations when emotions could get people killed. "Step away from my truck." The young man's smile widened, showing teeth. "Do you know who my father is, Richard Ashford? He owns half this city, including about 50 cops who will be here in 5 minutes if I make one call." Sarah met his eyes and saw the calculation there, the absolute certainty that his wealth and connections made him untouchable. She'd seen that look before on criminals who thought badges were just obstacles to be bought or intimidated. Marcus used to say that the most dangerous people weren't the desperate ones. They were the ones who believed rules didn't apply to them. "I don't care if your father owns the whole state. Get away from my truck." Trevor Ashford's smile vanished. He pulled out his phone with exaggerated slowness, like he was drawing a weapon. "One call, 50 cops. You really want to do this?" Sarah's hand moved to the door latch of the dog compartment, and her voice dropped to something quieter and far more dangerous. "Make your call. I know all 50 of those cops, and they know me." The standoff stretched for 3 heartbeats. Trevor's friends shifted nervously. Lily's hand found Sarah's jacket sleeve, small fingers gripping tight. Inside the compartment, all 3 dogs went silent, not calm but focused, the kind of silence that comes before an attack. Trevor stepped closer, reaching for the door handle. "You've got 3 seconds to open this door, or I'm taking it off the hinges and dragging that brat out myself." Sarah's hand tightened on the latch. "You've got 3 seconds to step back or—" "I let them out." Trevor scoffed. "They're locked up. What are they going to do, bark at me?" Sarah pulled the latch. The door swung open. and 3 elite police K-9s trained for high-risk tactical operations stepped out in perfect formation. Ranger took point chest forward, 70 pounds of controlled aggression. Shadow flanked left body low, tracking every micro-movement. Blitz flanked right muscles coiled, ready to intercept any threat from that angle. They didn't charge. They didn't bite. They simply stood in a triangle formation with Sarah at the center, and the raw discipline in their positioning made Trevor stumble backward, despite himself. The synchronized bark that followed hit like a shockwave. 3 voices perfectly timed a sound designed to disorient and intimidate. Trevor's friends scrambled back to the BM. Trevor himself went pale, his expensive watch catching the morning light as his hand shook. Easy, okay, easy. Sarah's voice stayed calm. They're not the ones you need to worry about. They're trained to protect. The question is whether I'm trained to call them off. It was a lie. She'd call them off the second real violence threatened. But Trevor didn't know that, and his imagination was filling in gaps his privileged life had never prepared him for. He backed away, hands raised, trying to maintain dignity and retreat. This isn't over. My father's lawyers. The rumble cut him off. It started distant, almost subsonic, a vibration more felt than heard. Then it grew. Engines, many engines, growing closer with every second. Sarah's head turned toward the sound, even as the dogs maintained their formation. Trevor's face went from pale to white. Around the corner, like something out of a fever dream, rolled 200 motorcycles. They came in formation, 2 abreast, staggered by half a bike length, moving as one organism. The lead bike was a massive Harley-Davidson Road King Chrome, gleaming even in the industrial district's shadows, and the man riding it was built like a mountain. 6'5", 250 pounds, gray beard, flowing leather vest covered in Vietnam patches. His road name was stitched across his back bare. Behind him, the Iron Covenant Motorcycle Club, and behind them, allied chapters, veterans MC Patriot Riders, silent warriors. 200 men and women, most over 60, all military veterans, all riding in complete synchronized silence, except for the thunder of their engines. They surrounded Sarah's truck in a protective circle. Engines idling, eyes watching, not a word spoken. Trevor Ashford stood in the center of 200 hostile stares, and for the first time in his privileged life, money couldn't protect him. Bear kicked down his stand and dismounted with surprising grace for a man his size. His knees protested audibly, 68 years, and combat wounds didn't heal clean, but he ignored the pain. He walked past Trevor like the young man didn't exist, his eyes scanning for the reason 200 brothers had dropped everything and raced here on emergency call. He found Lily. She was still in the truck's cab, still clutching her phone, still wearing her father's jacket. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her small body was pressed against Sarah's leg like she was trying to disappear. Bear stopped walking. His weathered face softened in ways that would have surprised his enemies. Then he did something that made Sarah's breath catch. He knelt. The big man, the club president, the decorated Marine who'd led men through hell, lowered himself to one knee so his eyes were level with an 8-year-old girl's. His knees cracked like gunfire. His back protested, but he didn't flinch. "Hey there, little warrior. What's your name?" Lily's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Lily." Bear's smile was gentle as morning light. "Lily, that's a strong name. You know what a lily means." Lily shook her head, not trusting her voice. "It means courage, and I can see you've got plenty of that." Lily's lower lip trembled. "I'm scared." Bear nodded slowly like she'd said something profound. Brave people are always scared. That's what makes them brave. Cowards don't feel fear because they never stand up. But you stood up, didn't you? You saw something wrong and you did something about it. Lily's hand reached out tentatively, touching the Vietnam service medal patch on Bear's vest. Her fingers traced the faded colors. "Were you in the Army?" "Marines, long time ago. Your jacket?" He gestured to her father's oversized coat. "Someone you loved wore that." Lily's face crumpled. "My daddy. He died in Afghanistan." Bear's eyes closed for just a moment, and when they opened again, they carried the kind of understanding that only comes from shared loss. "Then you come from warriors, and warriors protect each other. That's what we do. That's what we're here for." Behind them, Ghost dismounted his bike. He was 64, lean and quiet, moving like smoke through the crowd of brothers. His eyes swept the scene with tactical precision, the dog Sarah Lily Trevor, cowering near his BMW and stopped when they reached Sarah's neck. The dog tags. Ghost's weathered face went still. And then something like recognition and grief and respect all mixed together crossed his features. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle, and when he spoke, his voice carried the kind of weight that comes from seeing death up close too many times. Those tags, Marcus Chen. Sarah's hand flew to her throat, instinctively protective. How do you know that name? Ghost's eyes were steady, holding memories Sarah couldn't see. Because I was there. Afghanistan 2021. 3rd Platoon. He was my handler. Saved my life. Twice. The world narrowed to just those words. Sarah's breath stopped. Marcus had served with Ghost. Marcus had saved this man's life. Marcus's legacy stood in front of her, living proof that his death had meant something. Ghost continued, his voice rough with emotion. When I heard he died protecting his partner, I couldn't make the funeral. But I thought about him every day since. He was the best man I ever served with. Sarah's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. It was my fault. I should have. Ghost's hands shot out, gripping her shoulder with surprising strength. No, Marcus died doing what he was born to do. Protecting. That's not your guilt to carry. That's his choice to honor. The moment hung between them, heavy with shared grief and understanding. Then a new sound cut through the charged air sirens. Multiple patrol cars rounded the corner, lights flashing, and Sarah felt the situation shift from dangerous to complicated. 2 officers stepped out, young faces trying to project authority they clearly didn't feel, facing 200 bikers. The lead officer, Martinez, no relation to Rosa, just a common name, approached with his hand near his holster, but not on it. Somebody want to tell me what's going on here? Bear straightened from his kneeling position, his knees protesting again, and faced the officers with calm authority. Officer, this young lady witnessed a crime. These men were attempting to intimidate her into destroying evidence. Officer Martinez looked at Trevor, recognition dawning on his face. Trevor Ashford, what's he talking about? Trevor found his voice again, backed by the presence of law enforcement he assumed was on his side. These people are harassing me. That kid has my phone and this woman won't give it back. I want to press charges for theft. Lily's small voice cut through the accusations. It's my phone and I have a video of him. Officer Martinez knelt down less gracefully than Bear, but with genuine concern. What kind of video, honey? Lily's fingers shook as she held out her phone. Martinez took it carefully, and as he watched the footage, his face transformed. The casual concern became rigid professionalism. His partner looked over his shoulder, and both officers exchanged glances that spoke volumes. The video showed everything: Trevor's cruelty, the spit, Jack Morrison's intervention, the shove, the fall, the blood. Officer Martinez's voice was carefully neutral when he spoke again, but his eyes had hardened. Mr. Ashford, I'm going to need you to come with me to the station to answer some questions. Trevor's face flushed red. Questions? That old drunk fell. My father will hear about this. You know who Richard Ashford is, right? You know how much he donates to the Police Benevolent Fund. The officer's jaw tightened, and Sarah saw the exact moment he made his choice between justice and politics. I don't care who your father is. There's a man bleeding on Martinez Diner's curb, and you're the last person who touched him. Let's go. But Trevor's phone rang before the officer could continue. Trevor answered it, his face going from defiant to triumphant. He put it on speaker, and Richard Ashford's voice filled the parking lot, smooth, confident, the voice of a man who'd never met a problem money couldn't solve. Son, don't say another word. My lawyers are en route. Officer Martinez, this is Richard Ashford. My legal team will be contacting your superiors. This is harassment based on hearsay from an unreliable witness. Bear's voice cut through the speaker like a blade. The witness is 8 years old and has video evidence. What's unreliable about that? A pause on the other end. Then Richard Ashford's tone shifted, becoming colder. And who might you be? Someone who believes in justice. Someone who's got 200 witnesses right here who saw your son threaten a child. Someone who's not impressed by your money or your connections. Another pause, longer this time. When Richard Ashford spoke again, His voice carried a threat that made Sarah's instincts scream warnings. Enjoy the next few hours. They're the last peaceful ones you'll have. The call ended. The silence that followed felt dangerous, like the moment before a storm breaks. Officer Martinez looked uncertain now, caught between duty and the very real understanding that Richard Ashford had the power to destroy careers. Then Officer Martinez's radio crackled. Another voice dispatcher urgent. All units near Martinez Diner. Victim Jack Morrison has been pronounced dead at Phoenix General. Head trauma. This is now a homicide investigation. Everything stopped. Trevor's face went sheet white. His friends started backing toward their BM, trying to distance themselves from what was coming. Officer Martinez's hand moved to his handcuffs, duty overriding politics now that murder was on the table. Sarah pulled Lily closer, feeling the child's small body start to shake as the reality hit her. She'd witnessed a murder. She was the only witness to a homicide committed by a billionaire's son. And 200 bikers or not, that made her the most valuable and vulnerable person in Phoenix. Ghost's phone buzzed. He checked it, his face going grim. He showed the screen to Bear, who cursed softly. Then both men looked at Sarah with expressions that mixed respect and worry. What? Sarah's voice was steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. Bear's answer was quiet, meant only for her ears. Richard Ashford just filed an emergency custody motion, claiming Rosa Martinez is an unfit mother, claiming Lily fabricated the video. He's using the system as a weapon. Sarah looked down at Lily, at this child who'd already lost her father and now watched her mother's reputation being destroyed by money and lawyers. The girl was still clutching her phone, still wearing her father's jacket, still believing that doing the right thing mattered. Sarah touched the dog tags at her throat, feeling Marcus's memory pulse through the metal. Marcus had taught her that warriors protect, not just with guns or dogs or tactical formations. Sometimes protection meant standing between the powerful and the vulnerable and refusing to move. Her voice came out harder than steel. Then we don't play by his system. Bear's eyes lit with something like approval. Ghost nodded. Around them, 200 engines revved in unison, not a threat but a promise. Lily looked up at Sarah with trust Sarah didn't think she deserved, but would fight to honor anyway. Officer Martinez finished reading Trevor his rights as more patrol cars arrived. The crime scene was secured. Evidence was documented. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. Richard Ashford had declared war, and he had weapons she couldn't match: lawyers, judges, politicians, mercenaries if necessary. All she had were 3 dogs, 200 aging veterans, and the kind of stubborn courage that comes from having already lost everything that mattered. Marcus was dead. She had nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. Ranger pressed against her legs, solid and warm. Shadow and Blitz flanked her naturally, their tactical training making them arrange themselves for maximum protection. Lily's small hand found Sarah's, and in that moment, Sarah Chen made a decision that would define everything that followed. She wasn't just a transport driver anymore. She wasn't hiding from responsibility or grief or the weight of Marcus's sacrifice. She was a handler, a protector, a warrior who'd forgotten how to fight, but was about to remember. The Iron Covenant had mobilized 200 strong for an 8-year-old girl they'd never met. That kind of brotherhood, Sarah realized, was exactly what Marcus had died for. Exactly what she'd been too afraid to embrace. Bear's massive hand settled on her shoulder. "We've got your back," Ghost added quietly. "Nobody gets left behind, that's the code." Sarah looked at Lily's tear-streaked face, at the phone containing evidence that could bring down a billionaire's empire, at 200 veterans who'd shown up because one child needed protecting. She touched Marcus's dog tags one more time, and this time, instead of guilt, she felt something else. Purpose. Sarah's blood froze before Doc finished speaking. The radio crackled with Padre's urgent tone beneath Lily's muffled crying and the unmistakable sound of diesel engines closing distance. "They found us, multiple vehicles, armed professionals. We're surrounded." Rosa's fingers dug into Sarah's forearm hard enough to bruise. Bear moved instantly, his bulk surprising everyone as he barked coordinates into 3 different channels simultaneously. Ghost was already mounting his bike, shadow loading into position with trained efficiency. But Sarah's tactical assessment was delivering an answer nobody wanted to hear. 15 minutes to Doc's location if they broke every traffic law. 30 seconds before a breach. "Doc, count them." Sarah's voice achieved the flatness that came from bearing panic beneath procedure. 6 vehicles minimum, 8 to 10 operators. Body armor, tactical movement patterns. These aren't cops, they're contractors with military backgrounds. Sarah's options collapsed like a house of cards. They just extracted Rosa were miles away and facing professionals who'd positioned themselves with precision that suggested inside intelligence. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Officer Chen? Richard Ashford's voice carried the smooth assurance of someone accustomed to winning. You have something valuable, I have something you want. Let's conduct business like adults. Adults don't threaten children. Everyone negotiates when stakes are high enough. Here's my offer, the witness for the mother. You've got Rosa Martinez. I want the girl. Midnight location forthcoming. Come alone, leave with both alive. Refuse and professionals make problems disappear permanently. The connection died. Sarah stood paralyzed as tactical reality crushed idealism. Surrender Lily, lose the case free. Trevor, render Jack Morrison's death meaningless. Refuse, listen while mercenaries executed an 8-year-old over radio. Rosa was already screaming before Sarah could speak. Bear grabbed her shoulders, forcing focus. Sarah, report. She relayed Ashford's terms, each word ashes on her tongue. Silence followed until Doc's voice cracked through again. They're counting down. I need orders now. Every principle Sarah knew said never surrender witnesses, never negotiate with terrorists in suits or fatigues. But principles were written by people who'd never heard children cry while armed men calculated breach angles. Bear spoke with the gentleness that made it unbearable. Without Lily's testimony, Ashford walks free. Trevor walks free. Every entitled criminal learns justice has a price tag. Sarah's hands trembled, despite decades disciplining them otherwise. Marcus would have known the solution, would have found the tactical miracle that saved everyone. But Marcus was 3 years dead, and Sarah stood alone facing a choice with no right answer. Rosa's voice cut through like a blade. Trade me instead. Everyone turned. Rosa straightened despite warehouse bruises, despite terror still lingering in her eyes. Tell him he gets me. Lily stays protected. This is what mothers do. We trade our lives for theirs. Before Sarah could explain why Ashford wanted the witness, specifically a small voice transmitted clearly over Doc's radio. I'll go. Lily, 8 years old, wearing her dead father's jacket, carrying Marcus's transferred dog tags, making the same calculation her mother just had, reaching identical conclusions through courage that destroyed Sarah's composure. My mom would sacrifice herself for me, so I'll do the same for her. That's what Dad would have wanted. Sarah's vision blurred. 2 hostages offering themselves mercenaries at the door, a billionaire who believed money purchased immunity, and her standing helpless as violence mathematics proved she couldn't save everyone. Ghost materialized beside her, speaking with the steadiness Marcus used to demonstrate. There's always a third option. Your partner taught me that in Afghanistan when we had no good choices. You just need the willingness to pay the price. Sarah met his eyes, these windows to a man Marcus had saved twice. What price? The price of being a warrior instead of a survivor, of trusting your team completely, of understanding that sometimes the only winning move is changing the game everyone else is playing. Bear was already in motion, his age-slowed reflexes compensated by tactical experience spanning 50 years. He pulled blueprints onto his tablet, calculating angles with efficiency born from planning ambushes in worse situations. Ghost coordinated with Doc through encrypted channels, buying seconds through negotiation, while Shadow tracked heat signatures using equipment the Brotherhood shouldn't possess. Sarah stood centered among 200 aging veterans who'd mobilized for one threatened child, finally understanding they offered something more valuable than firepower. They offered faith. Novak. Sarah speed-dialed the detective who'd betrayed them once already. I need Ashford's exact location, floor plans, security details, and I need you wearing a wire that'll stand up in federal court. Already active, Novak's voice carried exhaustion mixed with relief. I've recorded everything for 3 hours. Ashford's at his office coordinating like this is a military operation. When trial comes, and it will, I'll testify to every bribe, every threat, every order. You'll lose your badge, career, pension, everything. The pause stretched long enough for Sarah to hear calculations happening in real time. Then Novak answered with finality that suggested he'd already accepted consequences. I lost those the first time I deposited Ashford's check. This is how I reclaim them. How I look at Emma again without hating my reflection. But before Sarah could respond, another voice cut through the radio, professional female carrying authority that made everyone freeze. All units, this is Agent Sarah Reeves, FBI. Stand down on the breach. Repeat, do not breach. Federal custody is taking over. Bear's eyes widened. Ghost's jaw clenched. Sarah grabbed the radio. Who the hell is this FBI? We've been running parallel investigation on Richard Ashford for 18 months. Your situation just gave us everything we needed for RICO prosecution. We're taking custody of all witnesses now. The warehouse where Rosa had been held erupted in controlled chaos. FBI tactical teams materialized from positions nobody had detected, securing Victor's mercenaries with practiced efficiency. But Sarah's mind was racing through implications that made her furious. You let Lily be endangered. Used an 8-year-old as bait, Agent Reeves appeared in person at the Brotherhood's position 20 minutes later. Mid-30s, dark hair, pulled a severe eyes that had seen operations go sideways and learned to live with necessary evils. We had an agent embedded in Victor's team. She was never in real danger. She didn't know that. Her mother didn't know that. Sarah's control finally shattered. You used a child to build your case without consent. Reeves didn't flinch. We protected her by having someone inside. If Victor had received orders to harm her, our agent would have prevented it. This is how federal investigations work. Sometimes the system protects people by letting them stay in danger long enough to catch criminals completely. Ghost stepped forward, his voice measured. It's ugly, but effective. We've all done ugly things that worked. Sarah rounded on him. It's not your daughter they used. No, but I understand the math. One child at calculated risk to take down an organization that's victimized dozens. Marcus would have understood that calculus too. The words hit like physical blows because they were true. Marcus had made similar calls, had accepted ugly necessities because perfect solutions didn't exist in real operations. But understanding didn't make Sarah less angry about Lily being a chess piece in federal games. Where's Lily now? Sarah forced the question through clenched teeth. Safe. Doc and Padre are bringing her here. FBI will transport all witnesses to secure federal facility until Ashford's in custody. No, Sarah's tone left no room for negotiation. She stays with people she trusts. With us. Reeves studied her, calculating. You're not law enforcement anymore. I'm the person she trusts. That makes me more qualified than any federal agent she's never met. The standoff held for 5 seconds before Reeves nodded. Fine, but Brotherhood provides transport to FBI facility. My people maintain perimeter security. Compromise. Sarah accepted because she had no leverage and knew it, but this conversation was far from over. Across town, Detective Frank Novak sat in an unmarked car outside his partner's house, wire-active recording equipment checked 3 times. His hands shook as he dialed Detective Marco Torres, his partner of 8 years, his friend who'd covered for him, his fellow corrupt cop who'd helped bury evidence for Ashford's money. Torres answered on the second ring. Frank, been trying to reach you. We need to talk. I'm outside your house. Come out. Silence, then movement visible through windows. Torres emerged wearing jeans and a Phoenix PD t-shirt, confusion evident. He slid into Novak's passenger seat, and that's when he saw the wire. Frank, what the hell? Ashford's operation is collapsing. FBI's involved. I'm cooperating with prosecution. Novak's voice stayed level despite his hammering heart. Torres's face cycled through shock, anger, fear, calculation. You're wearing a wire to trap me, to give you one chance. Flip with me. Testify. Maybe we both survive this. Torres' laugh was bitter. Survive? Frank Ashford knows you're compromised. He called me 2 hours ago, told me to deliver a message. He pulled out his phone, showed a photo. Emma, Novak's daughter, sitting in a hospital room. Current timestamp. Novak's world stopped. He's got people watching her. Torres's voice carried genuine regret. Said if you don't give up the Brotherhood's location, Emma's next treatment gets delayed. Insurance denial. You know what happens then. Emma had just reached remission after 3 years battling leukemia. One denied treatment during this critical window could trigger a relapse that killed her. Ashford wasn't threatening. Hypothetically, he was threatening everything that mattered. Frank, just give him what he wants. Save your daughter. Nobody needs to know. This was the moment, the pivot point, the decision that would define who Novak was versus who he'd become. He thought about Marcus Chen pulling Emma from crossfire in Afghanistan, shielding her with his own body while bullets flew. Marcus had died protecting strangers. Novak couldn't even protect his own daughter without sacrificing other people's children. Or could he know? Torres' eyes widened. Frank, think about Emma. I am thinking about Emma. Novak's voice strengthened. What do I tell her when she's older? That her father let other children die so she could live? That's not the man I want her to remember. Frank, be realistic. I'm being realistic. Ashford's going down tonight. FBI already has him. His threats are empty because he won't have power to follow through. Torres' hand moved toward his concealed carry. Frank, don't make you what shoot your partner while wearing a wire that's recording everything, while FBI tactical teams are monitoring this conversation from 3 blocks away. Torres froze. Novak continued, each word measured. You just threatened a federal witness's family. That's felony intimidation. You're under arrest, Marco. Torres' gun cleared leather. Novak was faster, decades of training despite years of corruption still there. He caught Torres' wrist twisted, disarmed him in 2 moves that came from muscle memory older than their partnership. Torres hit the dashboard, gasping. You're making a mistake. I made my mistake 8 years ago when I took the first bribe. This is me fixing it. FBI units materialized from surveillance positions, securing Torres efficiently. Agent Reeves appeared at Novak's window. Good work, detective, or should I say former detective? Former. Novak stared at his badge on the dashboard. But Emma's safe. We've had protective detail on her since you first contacted us. Ashford's people never got within 100 yards. Relief nearly collapsed him. Thank you. Thank Marcus Chen. According to your file, he saved your daughter's life. Looks like you're finally paying that debt forward. As Torres was transported away, Novak's phone rang. Hospital. His heart stopped until he heard Emma's voice. Dad, some FBI people are here. They said you're protecting me. Is that true? Novak's eyes burned. Yeah, baby, that's true. I'm protecting you the right way this time. I'm proud of you, Dad. Those 4 words broke him completely. He'd spent 3 years ashamed to meet his daughter's eyes, convinced he'd sold his soul to save her life. But maybe redemption wasn't about erasing mistakes. It was about making better choices going forward. At the warehouse, Rosa refused to sit still despite Doc's medical orders. She paced while Brotherhood members coordinated tactical details, her hands working unconsciously at the ropes that had bound her wrist hours earlier. You should rest. Doc approached with antiseptic for rope burns. Rest while my daughter's still in danger. Rosa's accent thickened with stress. I'm her mother. Mothers don't rest until children are safe. She's protected by 200 veterans and federal agents. She's protected when I can see her. Touch her. Know she's breathing. Rosa's voice cracked. You don't have children. You don't understand. Doc's expression shifted, something painful flickering across her weathered features. I had a daughter, Iraq, 2007. She was 3. Roadside bomb hit the convoy I was treating. She was visiting base with other families. The silence stretched heavy. I'm sorry. Rosa's anger drained, replaced by shared grief that transcended language or circumstance. I understand why you can't sit still, why you need to do something. Doc's hand settled on Rosa's shoulder. So let's do something. Tell me what you learned in that warehouse. Anything useful. Rosa's mind shifted from panic to focus, processing information she'd gathered while bound and terrified. The mercenaries, they argued. 2 groups. Victor's team wanted to just take Lily and leave, but another group wanted insurance. They talked about staging accidents if Ashford's legal approach failed. How many in the second group? 3. Different accents. American, not Russian, like Victor. One mentioned courthouse security, like he had access. Ghost leaned in, having overheard. Courthouse security for what? Rosa's eyes widened as understanding crystallized. The custody hearing. Ashford filed emergency custody motion. The hearing is tomorrow at 2. He's planning something there. Ghost grabbed his radio. Sarah, we've got a problem. Ashford's got people inside courthouse security. He's planning something at the custody hearing. Sarah's voice came back tight with controlled fury. When's the hearing? Tomorrow 2 p.m. Rosa needs to appear or she loses custody by default. Then we make sure she appears, with an army if necessary. But Rosa was already moving, her earlier passivity transformed into focused determination. She grabbed her jacket torn from the warehouse and checked pockets. Key still there, phone destroyed. But something else, a small device she'd palmed from the table where Victor had left equipment. What's that? Doc studied the object. I don't know, but Victor kept checking it. Looked important. Rosa handed it to Ghost. Ghost examined it, his expression darkening. This is a frequency scanner, military grade. They were monitoring police bands, probably FBI channels too. That's how they knew to hit the safe house. The implications cascaded. Ashford's people weren't just well-funded, they had equipment and expertise, suggesting military contracting backgrounds. This wasn't thugs for hire. This was professionals who'd operated in war zones. Sarah arrived with Lily 15 minutes later. The reunion was everything, Rosa dropping to her knees. Lily running into arms that held her like letting go meant death, both sobbing while Brotherhood members looked away respectfully. But once tears subsided, Rosa did something unexpected. She stood still holding Lily's hand and addressed the assembled veterans with voice that carried surprising steel. You saved my daughter. You saved me. I will never forget this. Her accent thickened with emotion. But I will not hide anymore. Tomorrow I go to that courthouse. I testify. I fight for custody. And if Ashford's people are there, I face them. Rosa, it's dangerous, Sarah started. Everything is dangerous. Rosa's voice rose. Staying quiet while men like Trevor Ashford spit on me was dangerous. Waiting tables while customers treat me like garbage is dangerous. Raising my daughter alone because her father died serving this country is dangerous. I'm tired of being afraid. Lily looked up at her mother with something like awe. Sarah recognized the expression she'd seen it in mirrors when thinking about Marcus. Daughter watching mother become warrior. Then we go together. Sarah extended her hand. But we go smart, with plans and backup and every advantage we can create. Rosa took the offered hand grip firm. Together. Ghost's tactical brain was already working. If Ashford's got people in courthouse security, we need to identify them. Reeves can FBI run backgrounds on all courthouse personnel. Agent Reeves, who'd been monitoring from the perimeter, stepped forward. Already started, but courthouse has 200 employees. Screening takes time we don't have. Well, and then we assume everyone's compromised. Bear's voice carried command authority. We go in with overwhelming presence. Make Ashford's people afraid to move. You can't bring 200 bikers into a courthouse. Reeves was already shaking her head. Watch us. The planning session that followed was a masterclass in combining federal procedure with biker improvisation. Reeves wanted controlled legal by-the-book protection. Bear wanted overwhelming force that made attacks suicide. They compromised on something in between 50 Brotherhood members in courthouse lobby as concerned citizens, FBI tactical teams, in plain clothes throughout building, and Sarah with the 3 K9s providing visible security. But as details solidified, Sarah noticed Lily standing apart, small hand touching the dog tags at her throat. Marcus's tags, the weight of a dead warrior now carried by a living child. Hey, Sarah knelt beside her. You okay? Lily's eyes were older than 8 years should allow. Sarah, can I ask you something? Anything. Was Marcus scared when he died? The question hit like a blade between ribs. Sarah had spent 3 years avoiding this exact conversation with herself. I don't know, sweetheart. Probably. Most people are scared when things get dangerous. But he did it anyway. Yes, he did it anyway. Lily processed this, fingers still touching the dog tags. I was scared today. In the safe house, when those men were outside, I thought I was going to die. Sarah pulled her close. But you didn't. You survived. That's what matters. Is it? Lily's voice was small. Because I keep thinking, what if next time I'm not lucky? What if next time the bad men win? Sarah had no easy answer. Marcus used to say that fear was healthy, that anyone who claimed fearlessness was either lying or psychotic. But how do you explain that to a child who'd already seen too much? Next time we'll be ready, and the time after that, and we'll keep being ready until there are no more next times. Sarah tilted Lily's chin up. That's the promise I'm making you. Not that you'll never be scared again, but that you'll never face it alone. Lily's arms wrapped around Sarah's neck. Promise? Promise, Orphaz. As night deepened, the Brotherhood prepared for tomorrow's courthouse operation with the seriousness of soldiers heading to combat. Weapons were checked, routes were planned, contingencies were established. Rosa sat with other women in the MC Wives partners, members who'd earned their patches through service, learning what to expect, how to react, how to survive if everything went wrong. And in a federal holding cell downtown, Richard Ashford made phone calls to lawyers who were running out of loopholes, to judges who were suddenly unreachable, to fixers who decided his money wasn't worth the heat. His empire was collapsing in real time, but he still had one card to play: the custody hearing. If he could separate Lily from Rosa legally, if he could make the witness disappear into foster system, he controlled. If he could delay testimony long enough for charges to lose momentum, he might still escape. His phone rang, blocked number. Mr. Ashford, this is your last invoice. The voice was professional, detached. Courthouse operation is green lit. Tomorrow 2 p.m. during custody hearing. Target is the mother. Eliminate her, the girl goes into state custody, your people control placement. Fee is $250,000. Half now, half on completion. Eliminate, you mean? I mean permanently remove the problem. You hired professionals. Let us be professional. Ashford's hands shook. He'd ordered intimidation before, bribes, evidence destruction. But this was different. This was murder in a courthouse surrounded by witnesses. Do it. The words came out before conscience could stop them. Whatever it takes. The line went dead. Richard Ashford sat alone in his cell, wondering when he'd become the kind of man who ordered hits on service workers, and realizing he'd probably always been that man, he'd just never been caught before. At the Brotherhood staging area, Sarah's radio crackled with Agent Reeves's voice, urgent and professional. Sarah, we've intercepted a call. Ashford just ordered a hit. Target is Rosa. Location is tomorrow's custody hearing. Time is 2 p.m. The room went silent. Rosa's face drained of color. Lily gasped. Bear's jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Sarah's voice came out flat, tactical, all emotion buried beneath procedure. How many operators? Unknown. Call was brief. But contractor mentioned courthouse operation like it was planned detail. These aren't amateurs. Then neither are we. Sarah looked at Barrett Ghost, at 200 veterans who'd mobilized for a child and would sure as hell mobilize for a mother. Change of plans. We don't just protect Rosa at the courthouse. We end this before it starts. Sarah, federal rules of engagement, Reeves started. Your rules, not ours. We're private citizens protecting someone we care about. If professionals come, they'll find we're professionals too. Bear stood his mountain-sized frame casting shadows. How long until the hearing? Sarah checked her watch. 16 hours. Then we have 16 hours to prepare. Ghost run reconnaissance on courthouse entrances, sightlines, blind spots. Doc prepare trauma kit for mass casualty. Wrench get our vehicles staged for rapid extract. Everyone else gets some sleep. Tomorrow we go to war in a courthouse, and we're going to win because we have something Ashford's hired guns don't have. What's that? Rosa asked. Bear's smile was predatory. We have something worth dying for. They're just getting paid. As the Brotherhood dispersed to their assignments, Sarah found herself alone with Lily again. The child should have been exhausted, should have been sleeping, but her eyes were wide and alert. Sarah, are people going to die tomorrow? Sarah couldn't lie. Maybe, I hope not, but maybe. Will you die? I'm going to try very hard not to. Lily's hand found Sarah's small fingers interlacing with scarred ones. I don't want you to die like Marcus. I don't want to lose someone else. Sarah pulled her close, and this time when she spoke, the words came from somewhere deeper than training or procedure. Marcus taught me something important. He said the point isn't to avoid dying. The point is to make your life mean something while you're alive. Tomorrow, your mother's going to fight for you in that courthouse, and we're going to make sure she survives to keep being your mother. That means something. That's worth the risk. Lily absorbed this, processing it with the seriousness of someone much older. Okay, then I'll be brave tomorrow too. You don't have to be. Yes, I do, because if everyone else is being brave, I can't be the only one who's scared. Sarah smiled through tears. Being scared and being brave aren't opposites, sweetheart. They're the same thing. You can be both. As Lily finally drifted to sleep in Rose's arms, Sarah stepped outside where Ghost waited. They stood in silence for a moment, both processing what tomorrow might bring. Marcus would approve. Ghost spoke quietly. Of what you're doing, who you've become. Marcus would probably say we're insane. Same thing. Ghost's smile was visible even in darkness. You ready for this? Sarah touched her bare neck where dog tags used to hang, felt the absence like phantom limb. No, but I'm going anyway. That's the only kind of ready that matters. At 11 p.m., Sarah's phone rang. Courthouse administration, confused voice delivering news that made her blood freeze. Ms. Chen, there's been a schedule change. The custody hearing has been moved up. It's happening in 1 hour. Judge Hammond is convening emergency session. You need to get Rosa Martinez to the courthouse immediately or she loses custody by default. Sarah's mind raced. 1 hour, middle of the night. Every plan they'd made collapsed. This was the real play forced them to come unprepared, off-balance, vulnerable. She grabbed her radio. All units were going now. Courthouse in 1 hour. This is not a drill. The Brotherhood erupted into motion. Engines roared. Vests were donned. Weapons were checked. Rosa jerked awake, panic in her eyes until she saw Sarah's face. What's happening? The hearing's now. We're going now. You're going to fight for your daughter now. Rosa stood, her exhaustion burned away by adrenaline and maternal fury. Then let's go fight. The convoy that rolled out of the Brotherhood's staging area was unlike anything Phoenix had seen. 50 motorcycles led by Bear's Road King FBI tactical vehicles interspersed Sarah's K-9 transport in the protected center, carrying Rosa, Lily, and 3 dogs trained for combat. They rode through empty midnight streets, engines echoing off downtown buildings, a river of chrome and leather, and determination flowing toward a courthouse where hired killers waited and a mother's love would be tested against a billionaire's money. The courthouse loomed ahead, lit by sodium lights that cast everything in harsh orange. Windows dark, doors locked, but inside lights burned on the 5th floor where Judge Hammond waited with Ashford's lawyers and whatever trap had been prepared. Sarah pulled her truck to the front entrance, and Ranger sensed the shift immediately. Shadow and Blitz followed his lead, all 3 moving into tactical awareness that came from genetics and training, and something deeper, the understanding that their handler was heading into danger and they would follow. Rosa stepped out holding Lily's hand. Bear's bikers formed a protective circle. FBI agents took positions, and Sarah led the way to the courthouse doors with 3 elite K-9s flanking her and the certainty that whatever came next would define everything. The doors opened. The trap waited. The game had changed. And Sarah Chen, retired handler, who'd spent 3 years running from responsibility, walked into darkness carrying other people's children forward because that's what warriors did when running was no longer an option. The courthouse doors swung open with the weight of history and the promise of violence. Sarah's boots echoed on marble floors that had witnessed 50 years of justice and injustice, her tactical awareness, cataloging everything: sightlines, cover, positions, exit routes. Ranger moved at her left knee, Shadow at her right, Blitz trailing to watch their 6. The dogs sensed danger the way sharks sense blood, their training overriding instinct to warn instead of attack. Rosa walked behind Sarah's protective formation, one hand gripping Lily's, the other clenched into a fist that trembled despite her efforts at control. Bear's bikers filled the lobby like an occupying army, their leather and patches a stark contrast to courthouse marble. FBI agents in plain clothes spread through the building with practiced efficiency, but Agent Reeves's face showed concern that made Sarah's instincts scream warnings. 5th floor, courtroom C, Judge Hammond is already inside. Reeves checked her phone, jaw tight. Sarah, something's wrong. Hammond never holds midnight hearings. This violates every protocol. Then why are we here? Because if Rosa doesn't show, she loses custody by default at sunrise. Ashford filed emergency motion claiming abandonment, the systems being weaponized against her. Sarah understood the trap's elegance immediately. Force Rosa into a courthouse at midnight with minimal preparation, isolated from support structures, facing a judge who'd bent rules. Win through legal manipulation even if hired killers failed. It was brilliance and evil combined. We walk into the ambush anyway. Sarah's statement wasn't a question. We walk in prepared. Reeves signaled her teams. I've got snipers on roofs across the street. SWAT stage 2 blocks away. Any hostile movement gets shut down hard. But as they rode the elevator to the 5th floor, Sarah noticed something that made her blood chill. The security cameras were dark. All of them. Throughout the entire building. Reeves' cameras are down. The FBI agent cursed already, radioing her teams. Courthouse security confirmed camera status. Static answered. Then a voice rang, somehow too calm for midnight emergency. Technical difficulties. They'll be back online shortly. Reeves's hand moved to her concealed weapon. That's not courthouse security. Wrong voice pattern. Sarah, we're walking into, The elevator lurched to a stop between floors 4 and 5. Emergency lights activated, bathing everything in red that made Ranger's teeth look like knives when he bared them in warning. Trap, Ghost's voice came through Sarah's radio, his team still in the stairwell. Someone cut elevator power remotely. Sarah, you're stuck. Sarah's tactical mind shifted instantly. Can you override? Working on it. But whoever did this knows building systems. Professional level. Rosa's breathing accelerated toward hyperventilation. Lily pressed against her mother, fear evident despite efforts at bravery. The elevator's walls felt like a cage designed specifically for them, and Sarah understood with crystal clarity that Ashford's money had bought more than lawyers, it had bought the building itself. Then the elevator speakers crackled with a voice Sarah recognized from recordings. Richard Ashford filtered through electronics, but unmistakable in its arrogance. Officer Chen, I did warn you about the consequences of interfering. Sarah located the speaker, addressed it directly. Ashford, you're already facing federal charges. Cutting power and threatening witnesses adds years to your sentence. His laugh echoed in the confined space. Sentences require convictions. Convictions require witnesses. You see the problem. Rosa found her voice despite terror. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. I've purchased this courthouse the same way I've purchased everything else thoroughly. The judge waiting upstairs, mine. The security monitoring us, mine. The contractors positioned throughout this building, definitely mine. Lily's small voice cut through. You can't buy people. People aren't things. A pause, then Ashford's tone shifted, something almost human creeping through. My daughter used to say things like that. Before she died. Before I learned that money can't buy everything, but it can punish those who fail to provide what money should have purchased. Sarah filed that information away, humanizing detail that explained without excusing. Ashford had lost a child and transformed grief into cruelty. It didn't justify his actions, but it illuminated them. Your daughter would be ashamed of what you've become. Rosa's voice carried maternal authority that transcended fear. The silence that followed stretched long enough that Sarah thought the connection had died. Then Ashford spoke again, and this time emotion cracked through his composure. You don't get to judge me. You don't get to speak about Emma. You're just a waitress who... I'm a mother, Rosa interrupted with steel. Sarah hadn't heard before. And every mother knows grief is not an excuse for cruelty. Your daughter died, and that's tragedy. But using her memory to justify hurting other children, that's desecration. Another silence. When Ashford spoke again, the humanity had vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Elevator will reach the 5th floor in 2 minutes. What happens next depends on choices you make. Fight and people die. Surrender Lily's custody, walk away, and everyone survives. You have 120 seconds to decide. The speaker went dead. Sarah immediately shifted to action mode. Ghost status on override. 30 seconds. But Sarah 5th floor is a kill box. Heat signatures show 8 hostiles positioned around courtroom. Professional spacing overlapping fields of fire. 8 contractors against Sarah. 3 dogs, Rosa Lily Reeves, and however many FBI agents reached them before shooting started. Bad odds that became worse in an elevator that would open directly into prepared ambush. Can we go down instead of up? Negative. Controls are locked to fifth floor only. Sarah knelt, bringing herself to Lily's eye level one more time. Remember what I taught you about being brave? Lily nodded, hand touching Marcus's dog tags at her throat. I need you to be brave one more time. When these doors open, you stay behind me. Behind all the adults. You make yourself small. Can you do that? What about Mom? I'll protect your mom, that's my promise. But I can only do it if I know you're safe. Lily's arms wrapped around Sarah's neck, and in that moment, Sarah understood why Marcus had stepped in front of bullets, because some things mattered more than survival. I'll be small, I'll be brave, but you have to keep your promise. I always do. The elevator lurched, resumed climbing. Sarah positioned Rosa and Lily behind her, Ranger and Shadow flanking. Blitz took rear guard, watching for any threats from below. Reeves had her weapon-drawn, FBI training overriding fear. Bear's voice came through radio from the stairwell. Sarah, we're breaching fourth floor access door. 60 seconds behind you. 60 seconds might as well be 60 years if shooting started immediately. Sarah's hand moved to Ranger's tactical vest, feeling the K9 tense with anticipation. These dogs had been trained for exactly this scenario, hostage extraction in confined space with multiple hostiles. The elevator dinged arrival. Sarah gave the command that released 3 years of pent-up warrior instinct. Ranger clear. The doors opened onto chaos that had been choreographed for maximum lethality. 8 men in tactical gear weapons raised position to create crossfire that would cut down anyone emerging. But they'd planned for humans, not K9s, trained to move faster than eyes could track. Ranger launched through the opening before doors fully parted, 70 pounds of controlled aggression hitting the nearest contractor at knee height. The man went down hard, weapon discharging into the ceiling. Shadow followed immediately after targeting the second contractor's weapon arm with precision that came from hundreds of training hours. Teeth found fabric and flesh, disarming without killing, but ensuring that rifle clattered uselessly away. Blitz moved like his name suggested, lightning-fast lateral movement that drew fire away from the elevator. Bullets tracked his path, but Dutch Shepherds are designed for exactly this zigzag patterns that make targeting nearly impossible. He reached the third contractor and employed the disarm technique that had made him legendary in K9 circles: jump twist, strike the weapon, land behind the target, creating confusion. Sarah moved into the chaos with Rosa and Lily behind her, using dog-created confusion to reach cover behind a marble pillar. Reeves was already engaging her FBI training, evident in controlled double taps that hit contractors' body armor without killing, but definitely stopping. Then Bear's Brotherhood exploded from the stairwell like avenging angels in leather. 50 bikers who'd served in Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, men who remembered when combat meant something more than money. They flooded the fifth floor with overwhelming numbers that transformed 8 contractors' advantage into deadly disadvantage. Freeze FBI weapons down. Agent Reeves's voice carried federal authority that even hired killers recognized. You're surrounded. You will not win this. Drop weapons now, or we drop you. The contractors were professionals. They calculated odds instantly and recognized losing propositions. Weapons lowered, hands raised. The ambush had failed because Ashford had underestimated what 200 aging veterans would do for one threatened child. But as FBI agents secured the contractors, Sarah realized something was wrong. 8 hostiles accounted for, but the courthouse had felt heavier with threat. Her tactical instincts screamed that this wasn't the real attack, this was the distraction. Reeves, where's Judge Hammond? The FBI agent's face went pale. Courtroom C, he's supposed to be waiting for... Gunfire erupted from behind the courtroom's closed doors. Single shots, deliberate execution style. Sarah's blood turned to ice as she understood the real target. Not Rosa, not Lily, the judge himself. Breach. Sarah charged the courtroom doors with Ranger not waiting for backup or procedure or anything except the desperate need to stop what was happening. She hit the doors with her shoulder wood, splintering under combined force of woman and dog. Inside, Judge Marcus Hammond lay on the floor, blood spreading from a shoulder wound, serious but survivable if they reached him quickly. Standing over him with a smoking pistol was a woman in a security uniform, late 30s, professional stance that screamed military training. but her face showed conflict that gave Sarah hope. "Step away from the judge." Sarah's voice carried command authority that made the woman hesitate. Behind Sarah, Ranger's growl promised violence if commands weren't followed. "I was paid to eliminate him." Ashford's orders: "Make sure this hearing never happens." The woman's gun stayed pointed at Hammond, but her hand shook. "But he's a judge. A good one according to records. Made tough calls, but fair ones. This isn't... I didn't sign up for executing judges." "Then don't." Sarah moved closer, reading body language that suggested crisis of conscience. "You can still walk away from this. Lower the weapon. Let us save him. You keep your soul. Ashford won't pay if I don't finish. Ashford's going to federal prison regardless. His money means nothing now." The woman's gun wavered, internal struggle visible. Then she lowered it slowly, placed it on the floor, stepped back with hands raised. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. I needed the money for medical bills. But this is wrong. This is so wrong." Sarah kicked the weapon away while Doc rushed past to treat Hammond. The judge was conscious, grimacing, but alive, and his first words showed the character that had earned him decades on the bench. "Make sure you read her rights properly. Everyone deserves due process, even people who shoot judges." As FBI agents secured the woman, Sarah heard commotion from the corridor. More Brotherhood members arriving, but also new voices, young, angry, and devastatingly familiar. Trevor Ashford burst into the courtroom, and Sarah's hand moved to her weapon before recognizing that he wasn't armed, wasn't threatening, was actually looking at the carnage with horror that suggested genuine shock. "I tried to stop this." Trevor's voice cracked with desperation. "I called FBI 2 hours ago, told them my father was planning something tonight. Told them about the contractors, about the judge, about everything." Agent Reeves stepped forward, weapon still drawn but not pointed. "You're Trevor Ashford. You're supposed to be in custody. I posted bail this afternoon, used my trust fund. Then I heard my father making calls about tonight, and I..." Trevor looked at Lily, at Rosa, at Judge Hammond bleeding on the floor. "I couldn't let him do this. Not after what I already did. Jack Morrison died because of me. I can't have more deaths on my conscience." Sarah studied him with assessment skills Marcus had taught her. Evaluated micro-expressions. Calculated sincerity. This wasn't performance. This was a 19-year-old who'd watched his worldview collapse and was scrambling for redemption. "Why should we believe you?" Trevor pulled out his phone, showed call logs time-stamped to FBI tip lines. "Because I've spent the last week realizing my father is a monster, and I was becoming one too. Because therapy in jail made me understand that money doesn't make you better than other people, it just makes you more dangerous when you're wrong. Because I'm tired of being the villain." Judge Hammond spoke from the floor while Doc worked on his shoulder. "Son, redemption isn't something you declare. It's something you earn over years of better choices. But calling in this tip, that's a start." The courtroom doors opened again, and this time it was Richard Ashford himself, flanked by marshals in federal custody. His expensive suit couldn't hide the reality that he'd lost everything. Empire-crumbling son, testifying against him, hired killers arrested, and now attempted murder of a judge added to his charges. But when he saw Trevor standing with the people he'd tried to destroy, something broke in Richard Ashford's expression. Not remorse exactly, but recognition that he'd finally pushed too far and lost even his own family. "Trevor, what are you doing?" Trevor met his father's eyes without flinching. "Choosing right over wrong. Should have done it years ago. I did this for you. Everything I built, every decision I made, it was to protect you from consequences." "No, Dad. You did this because after Emma died, you decided other people's children didn't matter. You turned grief into cruelty and called it protection." Trevor's voice strengthened. "Emma would have hated what you became. Would have hated what you made me become. I'm stopping that now." Richard Ashford had no response. For the first time in decades, his money and power and connections meant nothing. He was just a father who'd failed his living child while obsessing over his dead one. As marshals led him away, Sarah felt something shift in the courtroom's atmosphere. The immediate danger had passed. Hammond was stabilized. Contractors were in custody. But the custody hearing still loomed, and Rosa's legal battle was far from over. Judge Hammond, despite his injury, insisted on proceeding. "I'm shot but conscious. My mind's clear. And this hearing is happening now before anyone else tries to interfere with justice. The hearing that followed was surreal, conducted in a courtroom with blood still wet on marble, with federal agents standing guard with a judge who just survived assassination presiding from a chair because standing hurt too much. But it was also the most honest legal proceeding Sarah had ever witnessed. Hammond reviewed evidence: Lily's video, Trevor's confession, Ashford's recorded threats, witness testimonies. He listened to Rosa describe her 3 jobs, her love for her daughter, her determination to provide despite poverty. He heard Lily speak about her mother with eloquence that 8-year-olds shouldn't possess, but trauma had forced upon her. And after 30 minutes of consideration, Judge Hammond delivered his ruling. Richard Ashford's emergency custody motion is denied with prejudice. Rosa Martinez retains full custody. Furthermore, I'm issuing restraining orders preventing any Ashford family member from approaching within 500 feet of Ms. Martinez or her daughter. Trevor Ashford, you're exempted from that order. Conditionally, you maintain distance unless Ms. Martinez explicitly grants permission for contact. Understood. Trevor nodded, tears streaming down his face. Finally, I'm recommending Richard Ashford's bail be revoked permanently. He's demonstrated clear willingness to harm witnesses, intimidate courts, and obstruct justice. He will await trial in federal custody. Hammond's gaze swept the courtroom. This proceeding is concluded. Now someone get me to a hospital before I pass out. As Hammond was transported away, Rosa collapsed into Bear's arms, sobbing with relief that came from depths Sarah couldn't fathom. Lily pressed against her mother, both of them holding each other like letting go meant dissolution. The Brotherhood surrounded them protectively, forming a wall between this family and any remaining threats. Sarah found herself standing beside Trevor, both of them watching the reunion neither had any part in. After a moment, Trevor spoke quietly. Thank you for stopping my father, for protecting them, for not shooting me when I showed up. Sarah's response was measured. Jack Morrison died because you shoved him. You chased Lily through alleys. You threatened a child. Thank yous don't erase that. I know. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be someone my apology might eventually matter to. Trevor looked at his hands like they belonged to a stranger. Starting tomorrow, I'm pleading guilty to manslaughter. No deals, no lawyers reducing charges. I killed Jack Morrison. I need to face that completely. Why your father's lawyers could probably, because your partner Marcus died doing the right thing. Jack Morrison died because I did the wrong thing. I can't bring either of them back, but I can at least try to honor their memories by being honest about what I did. Sarah studied him silently, then made a decision that surprised herself. There's a diner, Martinez's table. Rosa works there. In about 2 years, when you've served enough time to prove you're serious, go there. Ask Rosa if she needs a dishwasher. Work hard. Don't expect forgiveness. Just work. Trevor's eyes widened. You think she'd let me? I think redemption is earned through sustained effort, not one good decision. Prove you meant what you said tonight. Then we'll see. As federal agents began clearing the courthouse, Sarah gathered Lily and Rosa. Let's go home. Home? Lily's voice was small. Where's home? Sarah's heart broke because she didn't have a good answer. Rosa's apartment was a crime scene. The safe house was compromised. Home had become an abstract concept for this family. But Bear stepped forward, his mountain-sized frame somehow gentle. Tonight, home is the clubhouse. Tomorrow we find you somewhere permanent. But tonight, you're family. And family has a place. The convoy that rolled away from the courthouse at 3 a.m. was quieter than the one that had arrived. Exhaustion replaced adrenaline, relief mixed with trauma. But they'd survived, and in situations like these, survival was victory enough. Sarah drove with Ranger in the passenger seat, the dog's graying muzzle resting on her knee. Shadow and Blitz slept in back, finally relaxed after hours of tactical alertness. Through her rearview mirror, Sarah watched Rosa and Lily in the following vehicle, mother and daughter both asleep against each other. Her phone buzzed. Text from Agent Reeves. Preliminary counts Richard Ashford facing 47 federal charges. Minimum sentence 25 years. He won't see freedom again. You did good tonight, Chen. Sarah didn't feel like she'd done good. She felt like she'd survived something that should have killed her but hadn't, and now she had to figure out what that survival meant. The weeks that followed blurred together. Trevor Ashford pled guilty and received 7 years with parole possibility after 5. Richard Ashford's trial became a spectacle that exposed decades of corruption. Judge Hammond recovered and returned to the bench with increased security. The woman who'd shot him, Melissa Torres, former Army medic who'd fallen on hard times, received a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony about Ashford's contractor network. Detective Frank Novak officially resigned from Phoenix PD, but found his testimony crucial in prosecuting corrupt officers. Emma remained cancer-free. Novak opened a private investigation firm specializing in cases where wealthy defendants needed investigating rather than protecting. Rosa bought partial ownership in Martinez's table after community fundraising generated enough capital. The diner became a gathering place for the Brotherhood and a symbol of resilience that drew customers who wanted to support service workers who'd survived being targeted. And Sarah Chen officially rejoined Phoenix K-9 Unit as handler assigned to high-risk operations where her experience and composure made her invaluable. Ranger retired at 8 years old, too old for tactical work, but perfect for therapy visits and demonstrations. Sarah acquired 2 new partners, young dogs she shaped with Marcus's methods and her own hard-earned wisdom. But the real transformation happened over 5 years, measured not in dramatic moments, but in sustained choices and daily growth. 5 years after that midnight courthouse battle, Sarah Chen stood at the Arizona State Capitol building, silver threading her black hair more completely now at 67. Her dress uniform carried commendations earned through operations that saved lives and stopped threats. Ranger sat beside her in his service dog vest, officially retired, but unofficially still her partner, still the living connection to Marcus's memory. The Jack Morrison Memorial Act signing ceremony was smaller than media coverage suggested. Politicians positioned themselves prominently, while the people who'd actually fought for this legislation sat in back rows. But Sarah didn't mind. This was about Jack, about Rosa, about Lily, about every service worker who'd been treated as less than human by people who'd never learned that money didn't grant superiority. Governor Wilson, no relation to Sergeant Wilson, just coincidence, gave the requisite speech about justice and dignity. Sarah barely listened, her attention focused on the faces that mattered. Rosa Martinez, 43, now co-owned Martinez's table and had become a vocal advocate for service workers' rights. She testified at labor hearings, spoke at community colleges, and never let anyone forget that being just a waitress didn't mean being lesser than. Detective Frank Novak sat with his daughter Emma, now 17, and healthy, both of them representing the possibility of choosing redemption even after years of wrong choices. Emma wanted to study criminal justice to become the kind of cop her father had tried to be before corruption caught him. The Brotherhood occupied 3 full rows bare at 73, moving slower but still commanding respect. Ghost at 69, still sharp-eyed and tactical, Padre, and Doc and Wrench, and dozens of others who'd mobilized for one child and proven that age didn't diminish warrior spirit. And then there was Lily. 13 years old now, no longer the terrified 8-year-old hiding behind shipping containers. She'd grown into someone remarkable, tall like her father had been, confident like her mother was becoming, carrying herself with dignity that came from surviving trauma and choosing kindness anyway. She still wore her father's jacket, properly fitted now, instead of hanging like a tent. Marcus's dog tags still hung at her throat, and she touched them unconsciously before approaching the podium. The speech Lily delivered was something Sarah had helped prepare, but that came entirely from Lily's heart. My name is Lily Rodriguez. I'm 13 years old. When I was 8, a rich kid named Trevor Ashford spit on my mother and killed a homeless veteran named Jack Morrison. I filmed it on a phone that barely worked, and then warriors on motorcycles taught me something I'll never forget. She paused, composing herself against emotion that still ran deep. They taught me that justice isn't something courts give you. It's something communities create when they refuse to look away from cruelty. They taught me that courage lives in choices, not feelings. They taught me that family is whoever shows up when showing up is hardest. Sarah's chest tightened with pride as Lily continued. This law is named for Jack Morrison, a homeless veteran who defended my mother's dignity and died for it. But it's really about all of us, about everyone who believes that how we treat the most vulnerable reveals who we really are. Lily's eyes found Sarah in the crowd, held her gaze with connection that transcended biological family. Someone once told me that promises matter, that warriors keep their word even when it's dangerous, that sometimes the only thing standing between good people and bad people is someone willing to stand in the gap. 5 years later, I finally understand what that means. The applause was thunderous, but Sarah's attention was on Lily's face the way trauma had shaped her, without breaking her, the way loss had taught her strength without stealing her kindness. After the ceremony, the reception moved to Martinez's diner, where everything had started. The bullet hole in the concrete outside had been preserved, marked with a plaque. Here Jack Morrison fell defending dignity. We rise to honor his memory. Inside, the diner buzzed with celebration. Politicians had departed, leaving room for the people who'd actually lived this story, and working the kitchen, visible through the service window, was Trevor Ashford. He was 24 now, early release for good behavior after serving 4 years. He'd spent those years in therapy education, genuine transformation that prison psychologists confirmed wasn't performance. And when he'd been released, he'd done exactly what Sarah suggested, gone to Rosa and asked for a dishwasher position. Rosa had hired him. Not because she'd forgiven him, forgiveness was complicated and ongoing, but because she believed people could change if they worked hard enough at it. Trevor had been washing dishes for 6 months, accepting abuse from customers who recognized him, never complaining, never expecting special treatment. Sarah watched him work with assessment skills that never fully deactivated. She'd seen enough criminals to recognize authentic transformation versus manipulation. Trevor was trying genuinely, painfully, without guarantee of redemption. "You think he means it?" Rosa appeared beside Sarah, following her gaze. "The change? I think he's doing the work. Whether that's enough is something only time will tell." Rosa nodded, her own relationship with forgiveness complicated. "I forgave him not because he deserved it, but because carrying hate was killing me. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, doesn't mean trust. Just means I'm not letting him take anything else from me." Sarah understood that math intimately. Forgiveness is self-preservation, as choosing peace over revenge, as complicated and messy, and probably the healthiest possible response. Lily materialized with 2 plates of Rosa's arroz con pollo, handing one to Sarah. "You need to eat. You always forget to eat at events." Sarah accepted the food, touched by the observation. "When did you become the one taking care of me?" "About 3 years ago, when I noticed you taking care of everyone else." Lily's smile showed wisdom that 13-year-olds shouldn't possess, but trauma had granted. "Someone has to make sure Sarah Chen doesn't work herself to death." They ate together while the celebration continued around them. Bear telling war stories to younger Brotherhood members, Ghost and Padre arguing theology good-naturedly, Doc showing Emma medical techniques that might help her future career. It was family chosen and complicated, and held together by shared experience that couldn't be explained to outsiders. As evening deepened, the celebration wound down naturally. People drifted away with full stomachs and lighter hearts. Sarah helped Rosa close the diner, stacking chairs and wiping tables in comfortable silence, earned through 5 years of sustained friendship. "Thank you." Rosa's words came quietly. "For everything, for saving Lily, for saving me, for showing us that good people still exist." Sarah's throat tightened. "You saved yourselves, I just helped." "No, you kept your promise when breaking it would have been easier. You stood between us and people who wanted to destroy us. That's not helping. That's heroism." Sarah didn't feel heroic. She felt like someone who'd finally stopped running from responsibility and learned to carry weight she'd been avoiding. Marcus would say, "I just did what needed doing." "Then Marcus raised you well." "He wasn't my father. He was my partner." Rosa's expression showed understanding. "Partners who teach you how to live are fathers in ways that matter more than biology." The truth of that statement settled into Sarah's bones. Marcus had taught her courage through example, had shown her what mattered through sacrifice, had given her purpose through his death that she'd finally learned to honor through living. Outside, the Iron Covenant was preparing to ride home. Sarah walked to her bike, the Road King that Bear had helped her choose 3 years ago after Pier 9, after she'd proven herself worthy of Brotherhood respect. Ranger climbed into his sidecar with the practiced ease of a dog who'd done this thousands of times. Bear called out, "Chen, you riding with us?" Sarah looked back at the diner where Rosa and Lily stood in the doorway, both waving. Looked at Trevor, visible through the kitchen window, still working long after his shift ended. Looked at her Brotherhood family waiting to escort her home. Always. The formation rolled out under Arizona sunset, 200 bikes moving in synchronized precision that came from decades of shared experience. Sarah rode in her assigned position, feeling vibrations through her body, that connected her to every other rider to the road to the moment. They rode through streets where ordinary people lived, ordinary lives where Jack Morrison's death had become distant news, and Lily's courage was just another story eventually forgotten by most. But Sarah knew different. She knew ordinary people did extraordinary things when circumstances demanded it. She knew courage was portable and shareable and could be amplified through community. She knew Marcus's death had meant something had purchased her life, her purpose, her ability to stand between innocence and violence. The ride ended at the old fire station, where this had begun, where Lily had hidden, and Sarah had made the decision to stop running from Marcus's memory. The building was empty now, except for ghosts, but it felt sacred in ways that made the Brotherhood treat it like church. They gathered inside for the ritual closing, Bear raising his beer and toast. To Jack Morrison, who died defending dignity. To Lily Rodriguez, who refused to be silenced. To Sarah Chen, who kept her word. To everyone who stood up when standing up mattered. To the code that brought us here and the courage that keeps us riding. The response shook rafters. To the code. To the courage, to the family we choose. Sarah drank with them, feeling Marcus's presence like approval from someone who understood exactly what she'd done and why it mattered. He'd taught her that warriors came home, but heroes died for something meaningful. She'd spent 3 years trying to be a warrior, surviving, playing safe, avoiding decisions that got people killed. But Lily had taught her the flaw in that thinking. Sometimes the most heroic act was surviving, and choosing to stand anyway was living with the weight of decisions rather than dying to escape them. Ghost appeared beside her as the celebration continued. Marcus would be proud. Of the handler, you've become the person you are, the warrior. You finally accepted you always were. I'm still scared every time I strap on the vest. Good. Fear means you're human. The day you stop being scared is the day you should quit. He paused, then added quietly, but you won't quit. You've got too much of Marcus in you now. Sarah smiled despite tears. Is that a compliment? The highest one I know. As midnight approached, Sarah found herself outside with rangers staring at Phoenix lights, processing 5 years of transformation that had started with one child filming one crime. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lily sent with teenage timing that suggested she'd been waiting for the right moment. Thank you for keeping every promise. Thank you for showing me that courage is a choice. Thank you for being my warrior when I needed one. I love you. Not just for saving me, but for teaching me how to save myself. Sarah's eyes burned as she typed back. I love you too. You taught me as much as I taught you. Maybe more. She sat until stars emerged and desert air turned cold. Ranger pressed against her leg, warm and solid and faithful. Inside, her Brotherhood celebrated legislation that might prevent another Jack Morrison, might protect another Lily Rodriguez. But Sarah knew the truth that every veteran carried. Evil didn't end because laws changed. Injustice didn't disappear because systems marginally improved. There would always be another entitled criminal, another vulnerable person, another moment when good people had to choose between safety and service. And there would always be warriors who stood up, who answered calls they didn't have to answer, who chose others over self. Sarah Chen was one of those warriors. Had been even during 3 years of running, even during grief and guilt and self-doubt. Marcus had recognized it. Lily had called it forth. The Brotherhood had confirmed it. Tomorrow she'd report for duty because that's what warriors did. They showed up. They held their ground. They protected those who needed protecting. They kept promises even when promises cost everything. She stood stretched, muscles that protested after a long day, and walked back inside to her family, not family by blood, but by choice and shared experience and bonds that combat and crisis created. They welcomed her with cheers and fresh beers and demands for stories about Marcus, about operations they'd run, about the man who died protecting her so she could live protecting others. The debt was paid. The circle was complete. The legacy continued in every handler Sarah trained, in every child Lily inspired, in every choice Trevor made toward redemption, in every Brotherhood member who mobilized when duty called. Some stories don't end. They ripple outward. They multiply. They become the kind of truth that changes how people see the world. This was one of those stories, and it was still being written every day by everyone who refused to look away Everyone who showed up, everyone who remembered that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was fear transformed into action, terror converted to purpose, vulnerability weaponized into strength. It was being scared and doing it anyway, every single time, without exception, until the day you couldn't anymore, and then you passed the torch to someone younger who'd carry it forward into battles you'd never see but help make possible. Sarah Chen rode home under stars that had witnessed 50 years of her life, carrying Marcus's memory in her heart and Lily's courage in her purpose, and the certainty that tomorrow she'd wake up and do it all again. Because that's what warriors did. They kept their promises, and Sarah Chen had never broken one yet.